Let's go straight to the foreign editor of The Australian and author and commentator, Greg Sheridan. Great to talk to you again, Greg.
Great to be with you, Chris.
I'll get you a preview of the big first debate in the US in just a moment. But first up, I want to continue our discussion about the lockdown measures in Victoria. You and I have had different perspectives on it, but you've been both supportive of the measures but very highly critical of Daniel Andrews. How do you see the game playing out now, especially with federal ministers, Josh Frydenberg and Greg Hunt, really urging him to speed up the easing of restrictions?
Well, three things I'd say, Chris, in one sentence each. Daniel Andrews has been responsible for and overseen the greatest and deadliest policy failure in the history of Australian governance since World War II. And it is a travesty of Australian political culture if his government is not hurled into, less than soccer team numbers, minority status after the next election. This is the worst performance we've ever seen by any government in substance. Secondly, when the infections were out of control, I thought a lockdown of some kind was justified, not to say I supported every measure. And thirdly, I'm now very worried about how we come out of it, because to live with the virus, as we've discussed, Chris, you've got to be good at contact tracing and at testing, contact tracing, and eventually you'll need another hotel quarantine system because you'll have to have international travellers come back in. Now, what possible basis is there to think that the Andrews government has acquired the basic competence to carry out those measures properly? What happens if in 6 or 8 weeks' time, Melbourne gets a dozen cases a day for 3 days in a row? You know for sure that New South Wales could cope with that because they've got excellent contact tracing and their government is not in disarray. But what confidence could we have in Andrews? And the final thought, the Labor Party never got upset with him for inflicting hundreds of deaths on Victoria and billions of dollars of economic damage through policy failures, not through his personal behaviour, but through policy failures. But they got upset because a health minister plainly out of her depth had to resign. Yes. That shows you a political movement that's crooked.
That was such a strong point you made in your column this morning on that. And you're right, there is no obvious evidence that the state government in Victoria has learned any lessons out of this coronavirus response. And I fear that their only action in the future when they get outbreaks is back to lockdown, which would be unsustainable. But let's move to the big bout tomorrow in the US, the first debate. It's going to look at the big topics, the coronavirus pandemic, the economy, race and violence, and also electoral fraud. I would have thought the obvious problem, the obvious high risk for Joe Biden is another stumble. What about Donald Trump? Is his greatest risk being overly aggressive?
I think that's probably right, Chris. And the other thing is, oddly enough, I think Trump has given Biden a gift, which is very low expectations. Biden's gaffes are astounding. I'm sure you play them occasionally on your program,
I have
Chris.
Indeed.
And I can't keep up. I get so many of them coming across the email and on my phone. There's one a couple of days ago where he misread the teleprompter and said he'd gone into the Senate 180 years ago. There's another one where he says he attended an all-black South Delaware college. Of course, he never attended, never even spoke there, never went near the place until he'd been a senator for 30 years. Because the American media is so polarised, the Trump haters don't pick Biden up on this. Now, if he makes a gaffe like that in the middle of the debate and Trump calls him on it, that could be quite a telling moment. On the other hand, if he just avoids a terrible mistake and remains upright, he probably survives the debate. But there's a big question about the enthusiasm gap. Biden is about 6% ahead of Trump in the polls, but the people who are voting for Biden are basically voting against Trump. I don't think anyone votes for Biden with any enthusiasm, whereas Trump supporters are fired with enthusiasm. So this is still an open contest, although I think Trump is behind. And the final thing, Trump is not going to die wondering. So he's going to try everything in this debate, I suspect.
Exactly. I can't wait to watch it. Now, I've got to get your thoughts on Amy Coney Barrett. The debate's going to cover the Supreme Court tomorrow. You must be astonished, as I am. I know you'll have strong views on this. The Democrats are the party who delivered the first Catholic president in JFK. Joe Biden himself claims to be a practising Catholic, yet the amount of anti-Catholic bashing and demonisation of Amy Coney Barrett has been extraordinary.
Oh, yeah, it's utterly disgraceful, Chris. So Biden claims to be a Catholic, but there's not a single Catholic position that he takes on anything that's contentious. You know, he's a Catholic who repudiates his church's views on everything, you know, matters of life and death and so forth. Amy Coney Barrett is a believing Catholic. And the prejudice against believing Catholics is the anti-Semitism of the intellectual or political class. Dianne Feinstein famously mocked her when she was being confirmed as an appellate court judge, saying the dogma lives loudly in you. One of those grotesque American night show talk hosts said she's an effing nut, apparently, because she has 5 biological children and she adopted 2 children from Haiti. There was a social media meme saying, you know, colonizers adopted children from Haiti, white colonizers. Well, this is just utterly grotesque. And what you're seeing is the increasingly intolerant nature of the left-wing cancel culture and ideological conformity, which says you have to genuflect at every contemporary left-wing piety. Now, Amy Coney Barrett is personally anti-abortion and pro-life, but she said she won't let her personal morality dictate how she does her job as a judge. But she is apparently not allowed to hold that view. So this is a new religious test which the intolerant woke warriors are now trying to impose. No Orthodox Christian or, you know, Catholic other than a social justice warrior who has jettisoned all transcendent Catholic belief is acceptable in public life. I think it's disgusting, and I think it will rally voters back to Trump. Millions of Christians voted for Trump on the basis of the judges he would appoint.
Indeed, it's an inspired appointment by him or nomination by him. Thanks for joining us again, Greg. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Chris.
Greg Sheridan, you can read his stuff in The Australian. No doubt you see plenty of his analysis tomorrow here on Sky News as well. Don't forget that debate will be here live on Sky News from 11 o'clock tomorrow. We'll show you the entire debate and we'll give you plenty of analysis from guests here and in the US afterwards. I'll have Miranda Devine on my show at 5 o'clock tonight to show you the highlights of it.